Hi, this is Richard Fields with this week's Report from the Fields. I predicted over a year ago on this show that Joe Biden would not be the Democratic nominee for president this year due to his obvious mental decline. When he finally bowed out, I predicted that if the Democrats had an open convention to decide on their new nominee, they would win or could win in November. I also predicted that if Kamala Harris was anointed by the party elite, she would lose. And here we are. Just last week, I said that the vote was analogous to choosing between Mussolini and Lenin, and that I would vote for Chase Oliver, the Libertarian nominee. Well, Mussolini won. The good news is that Lenin lost, and I really mean that is good news. Fascism, personified by Mussolini, obviously, and Trump, and communism, personified by, obviously, Lenin, and also, to a certain extent, Harris, are just two sides of the same authoritarian, dictatorial coin. Yes, Trump has dictatorial tendencies. The legacy media has been relentlessly telling us that for the last decade. What the legacy media and social media has not been telling us is that the Democrats are, as personified by Biden and Harris, also have dictatorial tendencies. Look no further than the relentless censorship of social media for propagating anything other than the Democratic Party line, under the banner of misinformation, disinformation, or malinformation. Among the many pieces of true, factual, and relevant information that were censored were the origin of the COVID virus in the Wuhan lab. It was that Anthony Fauci did not fund that lab. He did. That the COVID death rate would be catastrophically high. It was no worse than the '68 flu. That the rush to market vaccines would prevent COVID. They didn't. That they would have minimal side effects. They did. That the Hunter Biden laptop was a Russian hoax. It wasn't. That Joe Biden was fit as a fiddle. He wasn't and isn't. That the U.S. was not responsible for blowing up the Nord Stream pipeline. It probably was, and I'm just skimming the surface. Generally speaking, the people who try to gain power either through fascism or communism are not much interested in the ideology. They are interested in gaining power. The ideology is a means. Donald Trump is an empty vessel regarding ideology. He successfully won 2 elections by catering to people's fear of immigrants and trade competition from Mexico and China. Kamala Harris is likewise an empty vessel in ideology, but one of her early childhood influences was probably her father, who was an avowed Marxist economist. Her nod to price controls on groceries and subsidies to home buyers have roots in Marxist ideology. Whereas fascists appeal to fear, communists appeal to envy. They also appeal to the goodwill of people to help their neighbors, hence the slogan, from each according to their ability and to each according to their need. That aphorism works fine at the family level. Infants are mostly needy and parents are mostly able. It also works at the tribal level where everyone knows everyone else. The threat of being expelled from the tribe keeps slackers working at least a little bit. But once the person-to-person bonds of knowing everyone are stretched too far, slackers quickly figure out that working is optional because the government will take care of them anyway. That is what ultimately leads to the downfall of socialism. But it takes a long time. Witness the Soviet Union and Communist China. It's important to note that both fascist and communist dictators kill a lot of their citizens. 6 million were killed by Hitler and Nazi Germany. Conservative estimates put the death toll in the Soviet Union and Communist China at about 55 million. Since there is little motivating ideology behind fascism besides fear of the other, fascist leaders tend to lose power relatively quickly. Since altruistic ideology is intrinsic to communism, communist leaders tend to hold on to power longer before losing it. Dictatorial governments are bad. Since fascist dictators have historically had shorter rulerships than communist dictators, the only comfort I can take in the Trump win is that he leans fascist while Harris leans communist. In full disclosure, I voted for Chase Oliver, the Libertarian candidate. That was not because of any encouragement from the Libertarian Party of California, which included Jill Stein, Cornel West, and Robert F. Kennedy Jr. as presidential candidates on its website, but not the Libertarian nominee, Chase Oliver. That's this week's Report from the Fields. I'm Richard Fields. See you again next week.